Hello everyone, welcome to Farsight's Intelligence Briefing for May 2022. Can you believe it's 2022 May already? Summer's about to begin in the Northern Hemisphere. It's like time's flying and the world is changing. Now, today's intelligence briefing is really special. You really have to understand this. It's a game changer once you really understand this. This intelligence briefing is called Weaponizing Love, meaning humanity is in deep trouble right now. It's in huge, deep trouble. And there is no way that we're going to fight our way out of this trouble using weapons like bombs, like aircraft, like stuff like that. Extraterrestrials that want to repress humanity have way more weaponry than we have. In addition, they have a lot of control over human leadership, as we've been talking about in some of our projects. And we can assume that almost all human leadership of some type is in some way, shape, or form being manipulated in some way. And only by disclosing this and talking about it can this stop. Only by talking about it and bringing it in the open is human leadership going to be protectable in some way, sense, or in some way, shape, or form. But in order to get things really turned around on this planet, we're going to have good extraterrestrials intervene in a major way against the negative extraterrestrials that are basically keeping this place as a slave place. And so we have to be able to have disclosure, but we also have to be able to ask, what will motivate the good extraterrestrials to do this? So we have to understand the one thing that will work. We don't have anything to buy them off. We don't have anything to go to the extraterrestrials and say, hey, we'll give you so many dollars. In fact, currency is a mechanism that's essentially only used in slave societies. It's a currency. When you pay for things with a currency, what you're doing is you're buying into a system where it says, in order for you to get something to live, in order for you to buy food or shelter or anything, you have to work. And if you don't work, you don't get money. If you don't get money, you can't pay for these things. And then it forces you to say, well, that's my own problem then. I'm not earning enough. I'm not earning enough to earn money. So it must be my fault. It must be something that I'm doing. But the reality is, societies have way more enough resources to maintain everybody. But this use of currency keeps everybody working, nose to the grindstone. And so that produces a way to manage a slave population because everybody's so busy working, trying to survive by earning enough money. So the idea of us going to the extraterrestrials and saying, hey, we've got some money to give you, that's like slave stuff. And so the idea of going to the extraterrestrials and saying, we have, only ourselves to give you. And then they would look at us and they'd say, you're slaves. Why do we need slaves? We don't have slaves. It's only the slaver extraterrestrials that have the slaves. So you have to say, what will actually make good extraterrestrials want to help humanity? And that means want to help us, you and me, everybody that lives on this planet. You have to ask that question. What's going to motivate them to do it? And the only thing that will motivate them to do it is love. They have to have love for us. And that's why you have to weaponize love. I'm going to be very blunt with this intelligence briefing. You have to create a love bond between yourselves, humanity, and the good extraterrestrials, or they won't do anything to help you. You have to give them a motivation. You can't give them yourselves as a slave. You can't give them your currency, your money. They don't want any of that. You can't give them mineral resources. They have plenty of ways to get mineral resources. You have to give them something else. You have to give them something else, and that's a love bond. They have to be motivated to want to do that. So we're going to get into that, and we're going to get into it deep. And then you're going to see by the end of this intelligence briefing how serious this actually is. We have to offer them something important. So let's talk about what love is. Before we actually get into what the love bond is that we have to create between ourselves, humanity, and extraterrestrials in order to get them to help us. If you love somebody, you're going to help them. Okay? What causes you to love that person? That's the big question. So what actually is love? All right, so first of all, love is an emotional thing. Humanity has emotions on steroids. We have really high levels of emotions. You have to understand going into this that all other extraterrestrial groups that we have seen, from the reptilians all the way down to all the other ones, including all the good ones, they don't have their emotions ramped up as high as humans do. So we have really, really, really intense emotions. But nonetheless, the good ETs can still feel things like love, even if it's not as ramped up as ours. But love is an emotional force, and it makes one person or group attracted to another person or group. Now, that attraction is necessary in order for one group or one person to help another person. Listen, folks, there is suffering going on all over the galaxy and all over the universe. People aren't going to go out and try to help every single thing, every single person. For example, if you know that there's somebody suffering downtown, are you going to jump into your car and run down there? Oh my gosh, I've heard that there's a homeless person downtown. Oh my gosh, I've got to rush down there and help that person. Are you going to do that? Seriously. The person has no connection with you. The person may be downtown. The person may be far away. They're not on your front doorstep. And the person may not be related to you. Are you going to jump into your car and go down there and spend your resources that you need to protect yourself to try to help that person? You don't know anything about that person? Well, there are people all over the galaxy and all over the universe suffering. The question is, what would cause one group to go in and try to help those people? So there's got to be an emotional bond that attracts one group to another or one person to another. Now, love can have a protective element. So it means that if you love somebody, you seek to protect that other person. So if you have a child, you seek to protect that child. If you have a spouse or a significant other, you seek to protect that spouse or significant other. There's an emotional bond that causes that level of protection. So love comes with the concept of protection. Now, love without any question, is basically selfish. Let's get that out in the front. You often think of love as sort of selflessness and think it's not. It's totally selfish. Love is selfish in that something positive is attributed to one partner as a consequence of some aspect of another partner. With the classic case being, of course, sexual love. So you get something when you love somebody. You love somebody and you go to them and you get something when you hug them, when you embrace them, when you interact with them. You get something and it makes you feel good. That's why you don't run into your car and jump and go downtown and try to save the homeless person, because you don't get anything from that homeless person. You get something from somebody. That means it's a selfish thing. Love is fundamentally based on the idea that you get something from somebody and then you love that person or that group. All right, now, I know there may be some people disagreeing, but the situation is more complicated. So please let me spell out the rest before you start really getting into whether you agree or disagree. Love can be personal or interpersonal in the sense that it can be between, say, two human beings or two groups. So one culture can like another culture, things like that. One person can like another person, things like that. But it can also be impersonal. So love can be like love for the environment, or love for a cause, or spiritual love, that type of conviction, spiritual convictions. Those types of things can cause a sense of love as well. So it can be a personal or interpersonal type of a thing between people, or it can be an impersonal thing, like for a cause or spiritual convictions and so on. But it can also have a sexual origin, and that's really important for us to understand, because if you understand the sexual origin of much love, then you understand how that intensity of the sexual bond creates a desire for that person, and that creates that love bond. So that you really get something through that peaking sexual experience, and then that creates that love bond, and you want to protect that love bond, primarily because you want to protect that intense sexual experience that then extends across the entire mind to saying you just love that person independent of that. But there's that fundamental sexual component that often is that intense bonding to get things started when you're talking about a personal or interpersonal aspect to love. Now, let's talk about the limits of love. First of all, love is local. It means you love things and people that are around you. You don't really love things that are in another universe. You don't even know about them, just like you don't know about the person downtown, the homeless person downtown. So love is fundamentally local. You have to know the being that you're loving in order to love that person. And a person or a group generally feels love for another person or group if the subjects are physically present or local in some manner. Now, sometimes you try to extend this through distance by doing Zoom calls and being able to see the person. Sometimes you extend it by use of the media, social media, for example. So that's what Facebook is sort of aging, but Facebook was sort of based on the idea of keeping people connected within families to keep that love sort of going. So there's many suffering subjects in the galaxy or the universe, but they're far away. And we feel nothing for them because they're far away, and there's no feeling that we have to jump up and try to defend them. Wars that rage in distant lands, and trust me, we have found in our studies here at Farsight that there have been wars that have rampaged across this galaxy. This is a war-torn galaxy if there ever was one. Wars that rage in different lands or places do not normally affect us unless the media brings the suffering home in some way. So if you have a war going on somewhere and the media is pounding us with images of what's happening and stories about people suffering, that can sort of make it more real in the sense that we see the suffering. So that war sort of becomes more of our sort of attention, more in our attention. But in general, wars that rage in distant places, we really don't know much about and don't really care much about. Subjects can care about subjects in different degrees. So if you're caring about somebody or a group, you can care about them intensely if they're lovers or friends, family, and the whole idea of having different degrees of love toward different people is a Confucian concept. So Confucius really honed in on the idea that different people, different groups will have different degrees of that feeling of love. All right, so let's talk about the universal love. Universal love, or unconditional love, or equal love for all subjects equally. That was a philosophy that was raised by a Chinese philosopher named Mozi, and it's not easily operationalized, meaning it may be fictional, meaning having the idea of universal love. I love the universe. I love everyone. I love this. There may be some philosophers that can try to make themselves think that that's happening, but trust me, if somebody hurt their sister or their brother or mother or father, they'd feel that more intensely than the love that they're trying to project out to the whole universe. So there's also sort of Greek or Christian ideas of love, such as agape, which is sort of more of a universal love. So that type of thing is not just from one culture or one spiritual tradition. That concept of universal love is out there, and it pops up differently. But the idea of universal love is not going to get the good ETs to intervene and help humanity with respect to the oppressive ETs. The oppressive ETs have lots of weapons. Any type of intervention that's going to be necessary to help humanity is going to require huge levels of resources. So having some ETs out there meditating in the lotus position, feeling universal love, they're not going to jump into their ships and in huge masses in the quantities that are necessary and jump in and try to help humanity. It's got to be something beyond that sense of universal love. Okay, so let's talk about what love is in terms of its basic elements, and then let's spread it out, and let me then detail exactly what humanity needs to do to weaponize love, and to get, by doing that, to get the good ETs to intervene We have to give we have to give the good ETs something. And we have to know exactly what it is we're trying to give them in order to motivate them through love. By weaponizing love, we make them love us. By doing that, they then have a motivation to come in to help us. That's where this intelligence briefing is going. So, let's get down to the details.